everyone. I'm Weiming Zhao. I've been living in Brandon and call it home for 33 years by June this year. I originally moved to Brandon, Manitoba in 1991, coming here as an international student attending Brandon University. Now, I never realized I would stay here for so many decades. I'm now getting quite well known for my art. The reason is I picked up painting 2 decades ago, more than 2 decades ago, and deciding to paint every day in oil, outdoor. And first I thought I could do it maybe for a year, but not realizing it's more than a year. It's more than a decade. It's more than 2 decades now, ending up with a collection of painting exceeding 7,000. For the last 2 years, I get quite a lot of publicity. And last year, out of the blue, I got an honorary doctorate degree from Brandon University, which came as a total surprise. So I don't think I deserve all this, but when it comes, I was overwhelmed and humbled. For people who live here for a long stretch of time, it is very frequent for them to spot me painting, especially in summer, but occasionally even winter, because I don't stop for winter. But this winter, I didn't do much because I was away in China for almost 4 months. So visiting my aged mother. She's 92-year-old, not in a very good physical condition. So there's urgency for me to go to see her. So I stayed with her for quite a few months, noticing the huge change in China compared to the China I left behind 30 years ago. The major difference in China is the living standard has been improved beyond recognition for average Chinese overall. And the infrastructure, technology area is such an advancement and improvement. The change in China is sweeping. When I say sweeping, it's a scale and also cover almost every part of China, even reaching the once used to be the most isolated part of China. And it covers such a diversified geographic zone. Unlike Canada, there's not much of a difference within Canada, like in terms of region, right? In China, it's more like US. It has a very cold, almost like Arctic region and the Siberian part of China. And there's also very tropical part of China, like Hawaii, almost like Florida. East part China is right on the coast area, and the far northwest is touching almost the Siberian part of the Eurasian continent. Yeah. Of course, being away from China for so many decades, going back, making me feel like a stranger in a foreign country now. So actually, I feel more and more like Canada is my home. So after 4 months away from Canada and coming back to Brandon, it really feels like coming back home again. China is getting more and more distant emotionally, other than some of the distant memory. So nothing will hold me back to China. So the only tangible line between me and China is my mother. And if she's gone, and the tie will be severed. In the late 80s in China, I was teaching high school in China. I taught English as a foreign language there. So then in 1989, I somehow decided to leave China because of the political repression I felt at that time, because in 1989, there's pro-democracy movement in China sweeping across China, led by university students. And it was crushed down by Chinese government in 1989. So I feel very depressed at that time. And that was a pivotal moment. I decided to leave. But at that time, leaving China for destination like Canada is very challenging. And immigration was not an option at that time. I doubt there were people who could immigrate to Canada directly from China. So at that time, the only feasible option is coming to Canada as an international student, coming here for university education. But I came as an undergraduate student, which actually is a bit more challenging, because at that time, most universities in Canada only accepting Chinese students as graduate students. And it was not very common to have a mainland Chinese coming to Canadian University as undergraduate student. So at that time, most universities in Canada have no idea how to process a mainland Chinese student as undergraduate student. They don't have a criteria at that time. So I sent the application to almost all universities in Canada from coast to coast. Brandon University is the very first to offer me a letter of admission. That's why I ended up living in Brandon. So I came as an undergraduate student. I was already 30-year-old when I came. At that time, I left my wife and daughter back in China, not knowing how soon we could meet again. So didn't realize it took almost 5 years for them to join me. So by the time they moved to Canada to join me, I was already done with my university study. I graduated. I got all my immigration paper done, So that's why I could have them over as a family. So that means I have to see them for 5 years. And it was very tough. Initially, I thought I would move on for my graduate study. I was actually accepted by McGill University for, a cognitive psychology postgraduate study. But when my wife and daughter came here, I decided not to pursue because I need to work to support the family. So with only an undergraduate degree, major in psychology, there were not many choices in terms of job opportunity, right? Plus you're a new immigrant. It was very challenging. So I was very happy to get whatever job offered to me. So I ended up working for Brandon Community Adoption, an agency supporting, mentally and physically handicapped adults. So I worked for that job for over 20 years. And meanwhile, I also got a job from Brandon School Division as an educational assistant and full-time during the day and working that job for over 25 years. So I worked both full-time job for over 20 years. And that's very demanding in terms of time, right? And it was not that stressful to me because I was considered underemployed. So it was not like a job so demanding I couldn't cope with. But time-wise, it really, you have to spend so much time every day working. So that's why 2003 I decided to do something not related to any of the jobs, right? Just for my own personal gratification. So I picked up painting. The last time I ever persistently doing painting is when I was a teenager. So from the time when I was 19 to 2003, I pick up again. There's already so many decades passed. Right? So I picked up painting 2003 is to relieve the tension I have, right? A different kind. Yeah. I decided to do something that almost like an anecdote to the daily routine of working two jobs. When I started, I mostly is pencil and pen drawing. Because when I started, it was November 2003. So it was towards end of the fall season. And at that time, I thought the easiest way is just to carry a sketchbook, driving around Brandon. And if it's too cold, I just stay inside of my vehicle, right? Just look out of the windshield and sketch. So when I started, I just do that every day. And so I produce one 9x12 pencil sketch every day. So after the winter, to the next spring, 2004, I ended up with 500 pencil drawings of almost all Brandon landmarks. And as soon as summer starts, the next year I start actually using watercolor first and acrylic. And eventually I decided oil is a medium to go for because it is much more versatile. It can survive all kinds of weather. Because watercolor has its limit, acrylic has its limit, but oil can survive all kinds of weather conditions. Doesn't matter whether it's snow, rain, or too hot or too cold. Now I found that I'm more predictable. Like I normally can finish a painting from start to end in less than 2 hours. No matter how big or small, it's almost so predictable. I can start to finish 2 hours. Everything or pacing, everything is getting better. But the overall style, I don't think it changed that much. I'm still very impressionistic. It's not because I want to paint that way. It's just because the way I paint will naturally lend my painting in that kind of style because I paint plein air. That means outdoor. So when you paint outdoor, you have to do it fast, very decisive, and capture the very essential of the element. Once you've been painting so long, you got into almost a habit of always observe, like you're looking at something, pretending you have a brush and a palette right in front of you. You always mentally register every aspect of the landscape constantly in terms of color, in terms of light, and you are always almost mentally, going through the process. But with me, I always have painting gadget in my trunk. So if I do have time, when something like that happens, if I see something so dramatic, I probably will just pull up my vehicle and grab my, easel and paint right away. Painting is never it's never always 100% a relaxing moment, right? It can be, it's a very, it's kind of a relaxing, but as well as very stressful, because not as not a single painting doesn't involve a moment of panic and stress, because there's always something goes wrong, like never a finished painting from beginning to the end, always smoothly. There's always a moment of panic, even after so many decades. And especially in a situation I'm not very familiar with. And I started with confident, and then in the middle of the process, suddenly something happened. You thought, oh, I'm losing it. Should I give up? I'm always very stubborn. I refuse to give up. And I knew if I hang on, and it will always end up, with a successful painting. So yeah, there's a lot of a moment, especially in the last few years, I get a lot of wedding commission, that painting the wedding ceremony. So that's something that I never done before. So last few years, I got commissioned quite frequently. So each painting of a wedding ceremony is very unpredictable, because anything could happen. Weather-wise, sometimes you're caught in the downpour of rain and huge gust of wind, or cold or hot. And so, well, I survived all, so a lot of good memory. And actually, the most memorable painting always involves something that is not that pleasant in terms of process and the result or anything. But you know what? After it's done, that painting happened to be the most memorable one, because you went through such a unpredictable, process. So that is stuck in your memory. That's why plein air painting is such a challenge, because nothing will stay unchanged in front of you. The change can be so swift, so quick, so dramatic, and how you deal with it is need years of practice and training, and also self-discipline. So that's why when you paint outdoor, you have to do it very decisively and quickly. So that means when you see something, the initial half an hour has to be very, very fast. You have almost grasp what impresses you right away, put on a canvas as fast as you could. So when you get all this basic light and color pattern, fixed on your canvas, and then from that moment downwards, if anything happens, you don't change accordingly. You cannot just change your mind and they just constantly change according to what you see at that moment. If you do that, your painting would lose the consistency in terms of color, light. So you have to put what you see on your piece of canvas right away, and later on you can slightly modify, but you cannot do drastic change anymore. Even more challenging is if your landscape involving figures of human beings, right? Because they don't move, or they don't stay put. They will be constantly moving around. So you have to improvise. You have to selectively capture the basic shapes of the human figures in the landscape. You cannot just indulge yourself with all the details, right? Yeah. I have accumulation of thousands of paintings for sure at home. It's not because I love them so much, I don't want to part of them with. If I could, I sell them, right? Um, people, there's always occasion people come to me for donation. Like any charitable cause, I support. So I donate painting every year. Sometimes every month people come to me, like for any kind of charitable events, I donate. Yeah. So I donate them. I never hesitate. And also, I never hesitate to sell them if people want to buy a piece from me. So yeah. Whatever left, it'll be left stacked away somewhere in my basement. Early last year, I came back. I got the news that I was going to receive the honorary doctorate degree in literature from Brandon University. And this year, when I came back, I got the news that Manitoba Legislature will honor me by making a statement from the local, an honorable MOA, Miss Simard. So he invited me to the legislature building, and I was totally surprised that they made a statement complimenting my 2 decades effort of raising the artistic profile of BU by painting. Oh, not BU, I'm sorry, Brandon as a community. Yeah, I thought it's something that I do so passionately, right? I never thought it will have any kind of impact on people's life. I guess I'm wrong, because I sometimes meet people whom I never met before, and they told me how much my art means to them. Especially during the pandemic, I post quite a lot. Use Facebook, Instagram as a medium, right? I 4 years in pandemic years, and I almost post every day because I still paint every day. Because during the few years when people are socially isolated, but as an artist, I felt, and it doesn't have much of a negative impact on me because I got so used to solitude, right? So I paint, actually, I was very productive during those few years. So I shared on Facebook. I guess in those few years, people needed something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Frequently, I go to Winnipeg to paint, and the most frequently painted area for me in Winnipeg is Assiniboine Park there. So you can see this pavilion building in the backdrop. This small painting was painted in such a rush, because as soon as I set it up, the heavy rain started to fall over, down. I saw people behind me. They're all just in a rush for shelters, but they must be surprised to see me refusing to leave. So after 20 minutes, this is a 20 minutes painting, I was totally soaked with rain and drenched. So this one I didn't finish, you can't see that. But I got the impression of that, right? The reason last year we went to the International Peace Garden and is because I was invited by International Peace Garden fundraising committee, okay? Because they're new, they have a new architecture landmark being built, and they need money to. So they wanted to create a fundraising gala event. So I was invited to do a live painting there to mark the occasion, and they want me to start the painting when the guests started to arrive, and they want me to finish the painting before the gala start. So as soon as I finished that live painting, they put it right on the easel in front of all the gala guests. It was such a beautiful moment, and having guests from both Canada and the U.S., mingling together, so they just did a live auction of my painting of the easel, right? So that painting ended up on they bid over $2,000, and the lieutenant governor of North Dakota got that painting. So before I started live painting, I had a moment, so I started this painting. And then after I finished this one, I went over, and before the gala started, I started that painting. That's the story behind why I had this Peace Garden painting with me. This is just numerous Riding Mountain National Park painting I've done. I've done so many, probably close to 1,000, just from Riding Mountain National Park alone. I love that spot. I travel to that destination every week during the summer for a day trip. So each time I go there, I will always paint at least one, sometimes 3 or 4 a day. So, and this is an example of the kind of plein air painting I did from, Riding Mountain National Park. So I became so well known there, so everyone see me, and they sound like they know me for ages. And I can see I did bring joy to people who, for whom the Riding Mountain National Park is such a part of their life, and it's such a part of their memory. And this is a painting I did on the lakefront last summer. I started with Brandon landmarks. Basically, every recognizable buildings, architect, heritage home is always found their image on my canvas, right? So this one is from last summer. I think it's on Father's Day. So that's why I always go to downtown area to find the inspiration. And I didn't intend to paint that, but just somehow, as we discussed before, certain light condition, the way, the light hit certain object, giving a fantastic impression.